Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. The Washington Commanders enter the 2025 season riding a strange wave of expectation and doubt, the type of narrative that often defines a team coming off a breakthrough year. Fans remember how electric last season felt, with Jaden Daniels emerging as a star and the team storming into the NFC Championship game. Yet, instead of complete optimism, there is a creeping sense of dread circling Washington, a recognition that in football, nothing is guaranteed to repeat itself. NFL analyst Brad Gagnon from Bleacher Report has poured gasoline on that cautious fire, suggesting that Washington's defense could be the very thing that prevents them from taking the next step. That might sound strange at first because the Commanders' defense has talent and upgrades, but statistics don't lie, and certain weaknesses still glare in the background. When a team overachieves one year, the following season becomes a test of validation, a chance to prove that the success wasn't just smoke and mirrors. For Washington, the nightmare scenario would be entering 2025 thinking the job is already done, only to discover that cracks on defense and other overlooked issues could derail a campaign that feels destined for greatness on paper. The upgrades made this offseason reflect a general manager in Adam Peters who wasn't blind to the numbers. Washington allowed far too many rushing yards last year and finished near the bottom of the league in turnovers forced, two critical categories for any defense with playoff ambitions. That's why Peters overhauled half of the starting unit, giving defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. new weapons to sharpen. The arrival of a healthy Marshawn Lattimore brings instant credibility to the secondary, while rookie Trey Amos offers the type of raw playmaking ability that excites coaches and fans alike. Adding Von Miller, even at this stage of his Hall of Fame career, changes how offensive lines will prepare against Washington because Miller still demands attention and opens opportunities for younger rushers. Javon Kinlaw and Dietrich Wise Jr. were acquired with one thing in mind: plug the run. On paper, this is the kind of defensive front that makes opposing running backs miserable. But paper is not reality, and the Commanders have to prove they are no longer the same soft run defense that opponents targeted throughout 2024. Turnovers are another storyline that could define Washington's season. Last year, the Commanders' defense finished with only 17 takeaways, a number that simply won't cut it if the team hopes to reach the Super Bowl. Games in the NFL often swing on one interception or one forced fumble, and the great teams are usually those who know how to capitalize on those chances. Quan Martin and Mike Sainristil are being pegged as potential ball hawks in the secondary, tasked with transforming close defensive stands into momentum-changing plays. Lattimore's presence should also help disguise coverages, giving quarterbacks a tougher time reading the field. Von Miller may not be the double-digit sack machine he once was, but his football IQ could lead to turnovers by creating pressure and forcing bad throws. Washington's defense doesn't need to become the reincarnation of the 1985 Bears, but it does need to become opportunistic. The nightmare scenario is another season where opponents methodically drive down the field without fear of a big mistake, keeping Daniels and the offense on the sidelines longer than anyone in Washington would like. Still, Gagnon's analysis isn't limited to defense, because even if Washington's defense improves, the offense is not immune from regression. The offensive line remains a legitimate question mark, with new players learning roles and continuity still very much a work in progress. Last season, Daniels thrived behind an offensive line that, while far from perfect, gave him enough stability to escape, improvise, and make magic happen. Any dip in cohesion this season could spell disaster, because a young quarterback who feels pressured on every snap tends to make mistakes. Offensive lines aren't built overnight, and chemistry is a hidden currency that can only be bought with time. Washington is hoping that time doesn't cost them early games, because the schedule starts tough and momentum matters. Imagine a scenario where Daniels is hit relentlessly in September, the run game fails to establish itself, and the Commanders find themselves in a hole they can't easily climb out of. That's the type of nightmare that would expose how fragile even the most promising offensive systems can be without the foundation of a reliable front line. Special teams, often overlooked until something goes wrong, could also creep into the story this year. Veteran kicker Matt Gay was brought in to provide stability, but preseason struggles have already raised eyebrows. A missed field goal here, a botched extra point there, and suddenly games that should be wins become demoralizing losses. Washington fans don't need a history lesson to understand how thin the margins are in the NFL, and nothing kills momentum faster than watching points vanish because of kicking woes. If Gay doesn't rebound, the front office may be forced into making mid-season changes, and constant shuffling at kicker rarely produces confidence. Beyond kicking, coverage units must tighten up, because special teams is the hidden third of football that can swing playoff hopes in either direction. For a team that aspires to a Super Bowl run, there is no room for sloppy execution in these small areas. The nightmare scenario isn't just the defense faltering. It's losing games because of details like special teams, the kind of problems that don't show up on highlight reels, but decide whether January football is played in Washington or watched on television. Confidence, oddly enough, may be the most dangerous factor of all. Jayden Daniels' rise was meteoric last year, a rookie quarterback performing beyond even the wildest expectations. That success, however, brings with it the temptation of complacency. Fans and players alike might start to believe that Daniels can simply put the team on his back whenever needed, that he will always deliver a late-game drive, or escape the pocket for a miracle touchdown. That kind of thinking is seductive, but it is also poisonous, because football is unforgiving when one player is asked to do everything. The Commanders cannot fall into the trap of waiting for Daniels to save them, because not every game unfolds like a storybook ending. If Washington leans too heavily on its young quarterback, the nightmare scenario becomes him struggling, forcing plays, and suddenly looking human under the crushing weight of expectations. This team must learn how to win as a unit, with defense, offense, and special teams contributing equally. Otherwise, they risk exposing Daniels to the same fate many young stars have suffered, burning brightly for a season before being consumed by the demands of carrying an entire franchise. The first test arrives immediately in Week 1 against the New York Giants, a division rival with plenty of their own issues. Gagnon pointed out that the Giants' offensive line is their biggest weakness, which could play perfectly into Washington's hands if the defensive front is truly improved. Imagine Von Miller and Kinlaw collapsing the pocket while Lattimore baits Daniel Jones into throwing an interception. That kind of early statement win would silence doubts, energize the fan base, and perhaps give this team the validation it craves. But the opposite scenario exists too. What if Washington's defense fails to generate pressure against a battered Giants line? What if the supposed upgrades look disjointed and out of sync in live action? The Giants may not be contenders, but division games carry weight, and starting the season with an embarrassing loss would ignite all of Gagnon's concerns overnight. Week 1 might not decide the season, but it can set a tone, and for Washington, setting the wrong tone could snowball into exactly the nightmare scenario analysts have been warning about. The Commanders need more than talent. They need urgency, focus, and execution from the opening kickoff. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. Chase Young's return to Washington has set the entire NFL community buzzing with surprise, speculation, and a sense of unfinished business, as the Commanders pulled off what many are calling a lightning-fast trade that nobody saw coming. In the space of a few hours, whispers turned into breaking news, and before fans could even process the possibility, the deal was done. Chase Young is back where it all started, wearing the burgundy and gold once again. For a franchise that has been juggling identity shifts, front office changes, and a roller coaster of expectations, the return of one of its most recognizable recent stars feels almost cinematic, as though a story that was cut short prematurely is suddenly being rewritten with a dramatic new chapter. The narrative of Chase Young, the former Defensive Rookie of the Year, returning to a fan base that once saw him as the face of their defensive rebuild, is layered with both hope and uncertainty. Fans are left asking, what version of Chase Young is returning? The dominant edge rusher who terrorized quarterbacks in his early years, or the player who struggled with injuries and inconsistency before being dealt away? Washington is betting on the former, and that gamble has fans electrified. The energy surrounding this move cannot be overstated, because Washington is not simply bringing back a talented player. They are reviving a connection that was thought to be broken beyond repair. When Chase Young was originally traded away, it felt like the Commanders were cutting ties with a once promising experiment, a player who was supposed to embody the toughness and swagger of a franchise desperate to reclaim relevance. His departure carried the undertones of disappointment, the acknowledgement that potential had not fully bloomed in D.C., and many assumed that chapter was closed forever. But sports are unpredictable, and the NFL thrives on storylines of redemption, second chances, and shocking reunions. For Young, returning to the Commanders is not just about playing football. It is about proving himself again in front of the same fans who once roared his name and watched him flash the brilliance that made him a top draft pick. The Commanders, in turn, are not merely filling a roster spot. They are reigniting a relationship with a player who can inspire both the locker room and the stands, giving this season an unexpected emotional spark. The excitement is real, but so is the pressure. From a football perspective, the timing of this deal raises fascinating questions about Washington's strategy and vision for the immediate future. This is not a move made by a team content with simply riding out the season or slowly building toward tomorrow. It is the kind of aggressive, eye-catching maneuver that suggests urgency, a recognition that the Commanders see a window to make noise right now. Chase Young's skill set has always been tantalizing. Explosive off the edge, strong enough to anchor against the run, and disruptive in a way that forces offenses to adjust their entire protection schemes. If he can stay healthy, his presence alongside a defensive front that already boasts talent could tilt games and ignite momentum at a crucial stretch of the season. Yet, beneath the optimism, there's also caution. Washington knows that Young's career has been a story of both highs and frustrating lows, where injuries derailed his development and left many wondering if he could truly live up to the generational talent label that followed him from college. The Commanders are essentially gambling on potential rediscovered, hoping this return unlocks the version of Chase Young who once looked destined to become one of the league's most feared defenders. The fan reaction has been a spectacle in itself, showcasing the emotional roller coaster of professional sports fandom in real time. When news broke, social media exploded with disbelief, memes, and a mix of nostalgia and cautious optimism. For many fans, this trade feels like a dream sequence, the kind of twist you'd expect in a sports movie rather than in real life. Supporters are already imagining Young breaking through offensive lines, sacking quarterbacks in dramatic fashion, and reviving the energy that once made FedEx Field thunderous when he was on the field. Yet, alongside the joy, there's skepticism. Fans remember the frustration of his injuries, the games missed, and the sense of unfulfilled potential. It's as though the collective memory of his first stint in Washington has created a paradox, immense excitement tempered by the scars of past letdowns. But that blend of hope and doubt is exactly what makes this reunion so compelling, because every snap Young takes will feel like an answer to the burning question of whether this gamble was worth it. The Commanders have essentially handed their fans a storyline loaded with drama, one that will play out live every Sunday. Chase Young himself must be feeling the weight of this move in a way that few players ever experience. Returning to a team that once drafted him second overall, in the same city where he was once heralded as a savior, is not just a professional adjustment. It's a personal journey of redemption. Athletes often talk about proving doubters wrong, but in Young's case, it's about proving himself right as well, showing that the flashes of brilliance were not illusions but glimpses of what he can still become. He knows the criticism, the whispers that labeled him injury-prone or inconsistent, and he knows this second chance won't come with endless patience. Washington fans are passionate, demanding, and deeply invested, and they will expect immediate impact from a player they once believed was destined to be their cornerstone. For Young, this is an opportunity to rewrite his legacy, to show resilience in the face of setbacks, and to channel the energy of a reunion into a rebirth of his career. The narrative is heavy, but if embraced, it could fuel one of the league's most inspiring comeback stories. For the Commanders' locker room, the return of Chase Young could have profound ripple effects, both in terms of morale and on-field performance. Teammates who once lined up beside him now see a familiar face walking back into the huddle, a reminder of the potential this defense once promised. The defensive line, already regarded as one of Washington's strongest units, gains a player who, at his best, can elevate everyone around him by drawing double teams and creating chaos in the backfield. But it's not just about X's and O's. It's about the psychological lift of seeing management make an aggressive move that signals belief in the current roster. Players often feed off the energy of bold decisions, and this trade sends a message that the organization is serious about competing, not just coasting. Of course, reintegrating a player with such a strong personality and presence is not without its challenges, and chemistry will be something to monitor closely. Yet the upside is undeniable. A rejuvenated Chase Young could transform this defense from solid to dominant, and that possibility has everyone buzzing inside the facility. Looking beyond the immediate excitement, this trade also raises bigger questions about the Commanders' long-term vision and identity. By bringing back Chase Young, the organization is not only attempting to boost its chances this season, but also potentially signaling a willingness to rewrite the narrative around how it handles star talent. For years, Washington has battled a reputation for dysfunction, inconsistency, and wasted potential, often letting high-profile players leave without maximizing their impact. Reacquiring Young suggests a more proactive, even audacious approach, one that is willing to double down on talent rather than watching it thrive elsewhere. If Young flourishes, it could mark a turning point in how the Commanders are perceived, both by the league and their own fan base. If he struggles, however, critics will inevitably frame this as another misstep, a move fueled more by nostalgia than by sound football judgment. That duality makes this one of the most intriguing trades in recent memory, because its impact will resonate far beyond the field, shaping conversations about Washington's culture and direction. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.